This is the Energizing India podcast.
On this program, we speak to the key protagonists of the energy transition and clean mobility sectors to discover what works, often what doesn't, and to speak to people who have been in the hard places before. Whilst we often speak of lithium, hydrogen, and electric mobility, there is a part of the energy transition sector that has been doing its bit to make the world a better place to live in, but doesn't make the screaming headlines and get everybody excited. In today's episode, we decided to highlight the role of biofuels, such as ethanol-enriched gasoline, 100% biodiesel, and the ever more exciting prospect of sustainable aviation fuel, all of which have the potential to make people feel a lot less guilty about the amount of travel that they do. Ranjit Kulkarni is Vice President and General Manager of Honeywell's Energy and Sustainable Solutions portfolio and leads the company's operations in India. He has over 24 years of experience globally in the energy transition sector. Ranjit, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Ravin. Thanks for having me here.
Ranjit, your experience is unique. There's not many people with a chemical engineering degree from Birmingham who've ended up in the energy transition sector, particularly focused on India and the Middle East. How did this all come about?
Thank you. It's a very interesting journey, I would say. 18 years has taken me to 36 countries, but also it started in a very interesting way. After completing my graduation, I was working initially with Deepak and then with Reliance, but my graduation project had got selected at a World Science Conference in Berlin. While I was presenting, and I was approached by one of a professor, and he says, Ranjit, I liked your topic. Can you come and do a master's with me? That led me to the master's in the UK at Loughborough, where I did process design. Following that, I went on to do my PhD, and then I joined a career with UOP. And in 18 years, I did various roles. So initially, first few years, I went around the world starting refineries. I started refineries in most of the parts. So I started in Asia, in Japan, in China, in Kazakhstan, in Turkey, in Italy. Then I took on a role of a service manager serving Southern Europe and Africa. Then I moved into Middle East in 2014. I looked after the sales for all the Middle East, North Africa, ranging all from Iraq all the way to Northern Africa. And then recently, 6 months ago, I came to India because we established Energy and Sustainability Group. And I came here to take the charge of that group. And we do see a lot of opportunities. And that's what got me into India. Quite excited to be back after 24 years of 36 country careers.
Fantastic. So we'll talk about the energy transition today. And as you've rightfully said a few times, the world's been in a constant energy transition, right? We started with coal and whale oil for streetlights. Then we moved into the hydrocarbon industry when we found oil, and that then gave you all of the other parts of oil that you have from petrol, diesel, moved into biofuels. And today we're talking about moving onwards to making green energy firm sustainable, everything that comes from solar and wind and hydro into batteries, hydrogen, and everything else. So what role has this energy transition played over the last 100 years, and where do you see this going over the next 10?
I think the first energy transition example is, we always quote, my favorite example, in 1905, there's a picture I saw in New York, Easter Parade, where there were 120,000 horse carriage carts on the road. The biggest complaint at that point was, it smells bad. Yeah, horse manure. In 10 years' time, the whole street was replaced with cars. So the first energy transition was driven already by emissions control. Since then, we started the cars. Okay, the UOP was there at that time for Honeywell. The gasoline revolution came. More and more gasoline became available, which fueled all the internal combustion engine cars. The second energy transition came when we started making these cars powerful. Okay, we wanted to go longer, we wanted to go faster. And that also fuel was also fueling the aeroplanes. So around Second World War, we came up with a much more octane boost gasoline technologies. That led formation of aviation gasoline. The third transition came around 70s when people discovered that lead is harmful to humans. And that's when we started into non-leaded gasoline. So that was a third energy transition came. And as we started into Euro 4, Euro 5, Euro 6 or Bharat 4, Bharat 6, that's becoming cleaner and cleaner. So energy transition is growing, and it's always been there, and it always will be there. We always will go and find better and cleaner forms of energy, one that can get us more with less.
So today we're in the midst of an accelerating energy transition, isn't it? I mean, what used to happen over 2 decades is suddenly happening over 2 or 3 years, and it must keep people at companies such as yours awake at the night, because you're putting billions of dollars into investing in new technology, new R&D, and yet it could be obsolete by the time you launch. Now that you've been away 24 years, been to 36 countries doing projects, come back to India, where do you think we are at on the energy transition to the new clean energy industry that we're heading towards?
I think India is at the sweet spot of this energy transition. And there are a couple of reasons to say that. Today, we are a $4 trillion economy. We're getting to $4 trillion economy. We would be expected to be a $10 trillion economy in a decade, and a $22 dollar economy in another 3 decades. If you look at our energy footprint today, 88% of more than 80% of our energy is outsourced, because we get either coal, gas, or crude oil from outside. If you want to be a $20 trillion economy, and if you want to be an energy independent, we cannot depend on so much outsourced goods or outsourced resources. We have to look within. What do we have in plenty? Sun, wind, hydel, and biomass. We have to use all of this to gain our independence, or to gain our energy independence. And we are at a sweet spot, because for all of us to drive this infrastructure growth, which does not exist today, we have opportunity to leapfrog a generation of technologies. What we did in mobility or mobiles, correct? We don't have to invest in a lot of landlines. We went straight to mobiles, and that made an access possible to everybody. We leapfrogged a generation. We are at the same spot when it comes to these new energies. And I think that's very exciting, because we are going to create something as a legacy. Today, if we look at internet data, we got it cheapest in the world because we leverage our strength. And I think we can do exactly same to the energy sector and come up with these new energy forms which will energize India.
So you're talking about us moving from coal into solar, wind, and hydel, which is then made firm by either BESS, battery energy storage, or hydrogen, if I get you correctly. However, in all of this, there is a dichotomy. And it's a dichotomy that you are focusing on, and that is biofuels, right? I know Minister Gadkari talks about biofuels a lot, and the energy transition sector in India kind of scratches their heads going, hang on, we're talking about solar and wind and hydrogen, and you're talking about biofuels. Where does biofuels fit in all of this? And I'd like to challenge you on this, because biofuels is bio. And, we've got 1.2 billion people, we're running out of land for the sorts of people we have. So does that land need to be making productive agriculture to feed people, or to be creating biofuels? And, where does biofuels sit in the energy transition?
So our energy transition will comprise of many. If we look at today's energy format, it's mostly electricity coming from coal or gas. And the other mobility, which is a street mobility, we look whether it's car, buses, that come from crude oil. It's going to be replaced by 2 in the future. One is electricity, which will be greener electrons coming from solar, wind, and hydel. And what road fuel will typically go, aviation fuel, etc. Not every place's batteries and electricity will work. So we do need to find an alternate for fossil-based fuel. And that space, some of it will be taken by biofuels. We need it because it's what we have. It's what we can harness. Now, biofuels can come from multiple stocks. Okay, now let's take, for example, SAF, or sustainable aviation fuel. Today, we can make sustainable aviation fuel from anything. Any used cooking oil, any waste fats, any waste greases, any agricultural feedstock, any waste biomass, okay, municipal solid waste, even the CO2 captured and green hydrogen we make. We can use any of these sources and make fuels. Mostly it will be SAF because it's very valuable, but we can use any of these, and all of this will be existing. We have all of this in plenty. So we do feel that all of these pathways will be critical. One difference we will see is, traditionally when we looked at electricity, it was a giant industry players. If we come at oil, coal, gas, it was big companies that were coming in. The new energies does not need that. Hydrogen space, you are seeing a lot of medium scale enterprises entering into this fray. We are seeing same in biofuel space also. Best thing about these two technologies, the whole ecosystem is being developed. Why biofuels? Because we are an agricultural country. If we can harness that molecule very properly and take it into highest value fuel or petrochemicals or other products, you are bringing your agricultural community with you. If that benefits get transferred down the line, you are empowering the lowest community or the hardest hit community on the ground. If they become part of this new energy, I'm sure it unlocks a much, much bigger potential for them. It excites them.
So this is indeed very exciting. And let's talk about SAF, Sustainable Aviation Fuel, which you've said. You've opened my eyes to it. I hadn't realized you could use anything for SAF. The aviation industry, particularly in Europe, gets such a bad rap because so many people are traveling, there's so many emissions. Where are we at, first globally and then in India, to actually having projects that take municipal waste, that take all forms of waste fuel to convert it into sustainable aviation fuel?
So globally, if we give it, as of today, globally, we are making roughly around 1.5 to 1.9 million tons of SAF today. We've seen a lot of announcements. Pretty much every airline in the world has tested and demonstrated that they can work on it. But even with this it looks high, but it's less than 0.5% of today's demand. We have already made pledges as per Corsia agreement that we'll have 2% and 1% by 27 and 2% by 28 and 5% by 2030. But there's not enough to go around. And that's because of the challenge in this sector. India is also starting in that direction. We are working on certain projects. We are not there yet. They are going through certain phases. We are a bit behind, but we'll catch up. We have enough resources. We do see a lot of interest in using used cooking oil. We do see a lot of interest in converting ethanol to jet or other forms of alcohol to jet. We see a lot of interest coming in taking captured CO2 from cement plants, from steel plants, along with green hydrogen and taking into methanol and then into SAF. So we do see a lot of interest, and I think in next 1 and 2 years, you will see a lot more projects going forward in terms of investment decisions taking place.
So you mentioned that any company can do this. You don't necessarily need to be one of the big, big oil companies. But is your company, for example, talking to the public sector oil companies, Indian Oil, Bharat Petroleum, Hindustan Petroleum, or even Reliance? Have you got interest from the big end of town, or is this small or medium-sized companies betting on a technology, and then there's going to be a very large distribution play that will need to come into place? Because I can't imagine airline companies would be very comfortable dealing with smaller entities. They'd much rather deal with the entities that they buy their present, aviation turbine fuel from.
Interestingly, we have seen this interest from everybody. We have seen the big giants, we have seen the national oil companies, the private oil companies, as well as medium scale and small scale enterprises. Okay, depending upon the feedstock. The good thing about it is most of these are going to be localized solutions. We are not going to transport all the biomass from, say, Haryana all the way to Kerala and process it there. Most of these will be around 50-100 kilometer radiuses where they will find, let's say, for example, ethanol. Most of this will be, you take a belt in Maharashtra and there will be a facility which will take all the ethanol and make it into SAF in that region. You go to other parts like city, you might have a municipal solid waste to SAF, because municipal solid waste, you need a population around to drive that. So depending upon the region and resources, we have seen a different interest. The one who has access to used cooking oil will definitely is the best place to upgrade that used cooking oil into SAF. The one with bio feedstock in the rural parts will be taking this feedstock into this one. Another part that comes along is a compressed biogas. So people are leveraging the things. For us, we will see this as a microgrid solution in many places, similar to what you are seeing in electricity, correct? It's microgrids that play locally. We also see some part of that playing out in SAF. The bigger players will be always looking at bigger volumes. They will not potentially go after small aggregation capability. They might like, okay, let me see at a bigger volume. What's bigger available today in the volumes? It's ethanol. It is CO2, green hydrogen. They will look millions of tons. Somebody will look 500,000, 100,000 tons. I think that's exciting because everybody gets to participate.
Excellent. Ranjit, so for our listeners who might not be that au fait on the difference between the various kinds of biofuels, you have ethanol that's mixed in petrol and then you have biodiesel. what is the real difference between these? Because they're both bio in some ways. One is an enriched fuel and one is not, I'm guessing.
So we looked in different ways. Okay, so let me give a perspective. So what happens is when you introduce ethanol into gasoline, okay, we don't want to dilute the importance of gasoline, correct? I mean, gasoline has a certain octane values. Ethanol has slightly different octane values. When we blend in together, it's a drop-in replacement. You have to look at how these two blend in well and how they perform in engine. So nobody can compromise engine performance. That's why we blend in. Today we are going 5, 10, 12, 15, and then maybe in 20. And I think Brazil has gone up to 27. As you go higher on ethanol, you also have to look at engine performance. It cannot be a sporadic, it's the whole industry has to move together in India at the same time, or whichever country, correct? Whether it's Brazil. There have been examples where people have tested 100% ethanol in a car. It will run, but you still have to take care of other things around it. Same thing goes into biodiesel. You can also slip some. Now, gasoline and biodiesel, if you look at it, gasoline is lighter than biodiesel. So it's a gasoline followed by kero and then diesel. If you want to slip some diesel, ethanol into diesel, you have to look into what impact it has on the diesel properties. Okay, that we have to. So that's why it poses a limitation. If you look at SAF, we have tested on 100% SAF, but it's an expensive fuel. Even today, it's 3 to 5 times, sometimes 7 times expensive than normal jet fuel.
Really?
It is that expensive. So people will be afraid. Okay, airline industry cannot afford that premium because all of that prices will be passed on people, and people are sensitive when they buy tickets. Correct? These are expensive tickets. So the way we are, and even if we want, there is not enough available. So it creates even more pull on the SAF or this kind of fuel. So we had to but we had to adapt to the market of what market can accept, how quickly the ecosystem can move, and how quickly we can bring all the feedstock in the market. We don't want to create sudden pull when there's so much less production because it creates unbalanced pricing patterns in the market.
That's interesting. So I'm thinking we're having a move to create sustainable fuel. So there's biodiesel, there's ethanol-enriched fuel, and on the other side you've got a lot of people working on battery, electric vehicles and hydrogen. And we constantly get the question, when will everything become electric? When will everything become clean? And it is a nuanced answer because, you still have horses and you still have horse manure. Yeah. And the reality is that I think it doesn't change immediately, but you do see a rapid transition into another form of mobility. So if I were to kind of encourage you to dream 10 years ahead, so we're talking 2034, and you're pulling into an energy recharge station in India, let's not call it a fuel station. Are you seeing what will be available at a fuel station?
We will see a mix of things available at a fuel station. I think Mr. Gadkari has a vision that we should reach 20% and even more. So I think we will be seeing much more ethanol blended into gasoline at fuel stations. So that's what we will be seeing. In terms of CNG, we will also be seeing compressed biogas being made available. That's again use all local resources, correct? So that's what we will be seeing more and more into the grid. Third, you will also be seeing charging station based upon these EV availability. So we will be seeing these three interesting mix quite a lot at local gas stations. I think that's the biggest factor we will do. I'll also extend it a bit beyond to aviation sector because that's one also comes under scrutiny, correct? Because they do contribute to some amount of global CO2 emissions. What we will see, the new airports and the new aviation industry will be all the landside movement, whether it's airport, will be pretty much driven by renewable electricity. All the landside movements that happen when the aircraft is on the ground will be through renewable electricity or renewable forms of energy. Once you get into the flight, people will look at SAF because it's 80% less greenhouse gas emissions. So people will be looking at battery planes, longer duration planes flying on batteries. It's still a distant reality. We are working, but I think it's at least a couple of decades away from becoming commercial.
Airbus has trialed the hydrogen a hydrogen aircraft. I'm not sure whether it was a 320 or an ATR version. Do you see hydrogen being sustainable, particularly for long flights, right? When you've got 18 hours, 15 hours?
That's aspiration, but I think, as you say, these are big investment. Anything that goes up in air has to go through long duration trials. So, of course, we will see hydrogen-powered cars, we'll see hydrogen-powered planes in the future. But it's a bit further down the line. I think our commitments will make us choose different options. As I say, it's not a destination; it's a journey. We will be not stopping at net zero because it's just a milestone for us to reach. We will continue beyond that because for us, we have to make sure that every molecule we take from nature, we use it wisely and return it back wisely.
The first person from the hydrocarbon industry to have spoken like that. So again, looking forward maybe 10 years, you started by saying one of the problems we have is extreme, reliance, 80% reliance on our energy from overseas, whether it's oil from Qatar and Saudi or Russia or coal from Australia. As you get to more enriched fuels with biofuels or complete biofuels, where do you see in 10 years this mix of import being? Because today we're already in a very interesting position. A lot of people are surprised when we say India's energy generation is already in the 40% or high 40s of being renewable. Now, a large part of that is hydro, admittedly, it's not wind and solar, but it's a matter of time before India becomes energy, the energy mix becomes renewable rich, and a majority of it is renewables, which is for all of us in the industry incredibly heartening and something that makes us happy when we wake up in the morning. Where do you see that in the oil and the hydrocarbons mix happening over the next 10 years? Are we going to be less reliant as a result of biofuels?
It's a combination of multiple factors. It's a combination of supply and demand. Okay, we already, for example, let's talk of electricity first. We already have made pledge to go 500 gigawatts of energy. We are racing towards 300 gigawatts pretty soon, correct? How quickly we reach that 500 is critical because everybody wants cheaper electricity if possible, correct?
Capitalism versus
absolutely. So that's the first is how quickly we get there. Okay, so that's the key is how quickly we can ramp up. Refineries are looking for electrification, correct? They also want to say, if I can avoid using natural gas or other source of gases to heat up things in the refinery or use energy in the refinery, they will look for electrification, especially with green energy. So that they are already moving. We do see that will take a lot of space. Second, refineries are known to process crude oil. But going forward, you will see them also having some biofeedstock as a part of their portfolio and having green products as part of their portfolio. They will diversify. They will have to have it because every refinery has made a commitment to decarbonize. And one of the path is to have more bioproducts in it. You get benefits out of it. You help industry, you help your nation, you help your shareholders to deliver what you've spoken for. So I think we will see that portfolio becoming stronger and stronger on that.
So you talked about compressed biodiesel or
biogas,
which I guess is a replacement for CNG. There's a lot of companies that are playing today with hydrogen ICE engines because it's one dimension ahead of, for example, a methane engine, right? Methane is a hydrogen-enriched gas, and so it's not that hard to go to hydrogen ICE. Is that the same thing to go from CNG to a compressed biogas engine, or are we expecting long capex cycles for people making ICE engines to be able to accommodate multi-fuel?
So there will be some changes, correct? Because right now we are looking CNG to go as a substitute because we also again depend on gas imports to subsidize, correct? CNG typically is used for our mass transportation.
Rickshaws and buses.
Correct. So idea is let's replace some of what we import with some of it what we can do domestically. Every ton we produce domestically saves a ton of imports from us, correct? It's a foreign exchange which we save. So I think our idea of getting 5 and 10 and 15% in the near future is what we are looking for, because as the industry grows, let's say if we are growing at 4 and 5% a year on year, our import will also grow 4 and 5% per year. But if that import substitutes come from our own sources, we do see that mass transportation will accept more and more. It's interesting, at one point Mr. Gadkari was saying that he was worried at one point whether the CNG transition will take off because of the pricing that happened. Luckily, industry put faith in CNG, and today we could see a lot of it. We call it always a transition fuel. The gas will always be a transition fuel, but transition still another next 20 years or so. So we do see that it will have its space. CNG, especially when it comes from biosources, it does act as a green fuel. It does help us in bringing our carbon footprint down. So definitely we will see that segment developing.
So from a policy perspective, what do you think really needs to happen to allow for the Indian, oil, gas, gasoline mix to be more bio-enriched over the next 5 years?
Maybe there are 3-4 parts of it, because each fuel comes with a slight different way. I think for CBG space, compressed biogas space, we do see government has incentivized, put out policy incentives to promote this. We have commitments of 5,000 CBG plants to be made in India. And those PLIs, correct production incentives, have suddenly helped us accelerate or kickstart that industry. We are seeing farmers coming and becoming part of that in form of small aggregates, correct? They have started to come up. So that sector, ethanol, we have seen our ethanol production has tripled in last 10 years just because of government support, correct? How government put policies and framework for farmers to make sure that if I invest in ethanol, in sugarcane, my products are taken care of. I am paid on time. For them, it was bringing them into the system and harnessing some of the benefits of the highly valuable ethanol. That made this industry grow. Mandating it, make sure that there is a market and you have to fulfill the market. SAF is a slightly different story today, because SAF, we are following first an international requirement which is due by 2027, and then a domestic will come in. I think that's being in works. Government is looking at that, how to incentivize it. And there are certain models, because when you put out these models, you also have to look availability. You cannot make mandate if you do not have a feed source security. When we say SAF, it looks at life cycle analysis. Whether or any biofuels, you look at life cycle analysis. And one of the topic you did not point, but a statement you did make, that when we go to biofuels, we have to be worried that we are not robbing the food chain of it. So anytime we do a biofuels, we always look at indirect land use change. If we should not take on the land which was used for agriculture or pastoral purpose. So we had to make sure that that is not counted. And if somebody does it, it doesn't qualify as a SAF. So there is an impact on that. So we are looking into that. And that's where policy is being developed, because there are methods and models which have been developed by Corsia and by GREED. And people are debating which ones to be used, how to keep it updated, because there are advances in farming. It's different impact in each country. So I think government probably is looking into all of those impacts.
Excellent. Last question then, Ranjit. For the energy transition sector in India, what are you most hopeful for over the next 5 years?
I think lot of projects. I think there's a lot of momentum going on. I would say excitement going on. I expect to keep this momentum going. And it's not a wish. I think it's a need for us as an industry, as a nation. It's need. We do expect all the 300 gigawatts coming on stream. We do expect SAF projects coming on stream. We do expect CBG coming on stream in the quantities which we are projections. We are excited. I think we need to keep the momentum going, because today it's not a elite movement, it's a mass movement. And we expect that benefits trickle down to the masses, because that will fuel more and more growth in this industry.
Ranjit, it's been a pleasure to have you on our show. We usually focus so much on lithium and hydrogen and clean mobility. It's actually quite exciting to see that there's stuff happening as well in the whole hydrocarbon chain with biofuels. It's indeed going to be quite a pleasure in 5 years. I expect to be driving down Indian cities, being able to breathe and see what's ahead of you. And you're playing a large part of that. And thank you for coming on the show. And thank you to Honeywell also for being interested in India and investing in India in such a big way.
Thank you, Ravin. I think it was interesting to have this discussion this morning. As I say, every discussion opens up new ideas, new avenues, correct? It gives us new challenges to think through. And that's what we strive on. So every idea I speak, for me, it's a feedback to take, okay, can I do this better? How can we do this better? So quite excited. I think it was a very good discussion this morning.
Excellent. Thanks so much.
Thank you.